when I was a young insurance agent and I was having setback after setback and trial after trial, and then came to a realization where I needed to make a change. And so I had this opportunity or I had to make a decision mainly of do I become a victim or do I become a victor? Because we
Wow.
all have setbacks, we all have trials, and oftentimes we become victims to them and we just say, woe is me, right? And I was experiencing that, but then I realized I have an opportunity to become a victor of all these.
Hi, Tyler. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark. Been really looking forward to it.
Me too. Me too. The show is called Peak Performance. And what really attracted me to you was that not only you're a top performer, you have been a student of top performers and top performance for a while. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I started this study of top performance several years ago, almost a decade ago, actually. It was when I was a young insurance agent and I was having setback after setback and trial after trial, and then came to a realization where I needed to make a change. And so I had this opportunity or I had to make a decision mainly of do I become a victim or do I become a victor? Because we
Wow.
all have setbacks, we all have trials, and oftentimes we become victims to them and we just say, woe is me, right? And I was experiencing that, but then I realized I have an opportunity to become a victor of all these. I can take them, I can learn from them. And so I started seeking out mentors. I started looking at individuals in my space. I have an insurance background who was a top performer, who was producing at levels I wanted to produce, who had systems in place that I wanted to emulate. And that kind of kicked me on this road for the last several years of just studying what top performers do, when they're running at peak state, what are they implementing? And that's where I discovered a big roadmap of what we call our four pillars of top performance.
Wow. Wow. It's so true. And that's really inspiring because you had to make a choice. And I love how you put it either be the victim or be the victor. It's so much easier to just be negative, blame everything and everybody, and make yourself feel good. I want to explore the decision a little bit more. Is it just your personality that you are like, no, I am just going to figure this out instead of just trying to blame yourself, blame everything else for your losses, for your lack of accomplishments at the time?
There's a few things I can contribute to, Mark, because I've always been a student of discovery. I've loved learning. I've loved education since I was a youth. I'm an upbringing of my parents. My dad worked at a university. My mom was a teacher. And so we had that upbringing of constant discovery. However, I'm still human. I still have our natural tendencies to view things in a negative light. And I was in that state. So that experience I shared, I was literally sitting in my office as an insurance agent and I had a great month, but I had the largest policy I'd ever written cancel that month before, which with insurance, you have to back pay commissions. So I had to pay all of that back, leaving me with literally hardly anything coming into the business that month. I literally wrote a paycheck for an employee out with my personal checking account. And it was that moment where I was like, what do I do? Am I going to have more months like this? All these trials? And it was actually my wife that kind of pulled me out of it. She simply looked at me and said, we're going to be okay. You're going to provide for the family. And it was that almost like slap. It was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And sometimes we need those mentors. We need somebody holding us accountable to say, hey, just go take action. You've got this. And we're going to figure it out.
That's a wonderful story. There's so many things to be said about that, right? There's a quote behind every successful man, there's a woman, right? And then I heard something recently as well that said that all really everyone needs in their life is for someone to truly believe in them and tell them that go get it. And that seems like your story with your wife being there for you and just saying, I'm here, I will support you, make it happen. Because she knows you as a person and that's why she chose to marry you. And turns out she was right. Look at you. You did good.
I know her. My father-in-law was a little worried when I always said I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So hopefully I've made him proud.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the entrepreneurial journey then. You decide to become an entrepreneur. It's not as rosy as most people make it out to be on the internet, right? What were some of the low moments in entrepreneurship?
So several low moments because it's not easy. I was literally just having this conversation this morning with my 7-year-old daughter who was complaining about piano. practicing her piano lessons. And it was simply, I told her, I said, nothing in life that is easy will make you better. The things in life that are difficult because they make you better. And I think that's the road that every entrepreneur has to go down, is realize that it is difficult, but it's worth it. It's there to make you better. Too often we get stuck in our negativity because we are pessimistic by nature. It's rooted in our psychology that negative experiences have a bigger impact on us. And too many people fall victims to that. And that's why I know in the insurance industry, statistically, 80% leave the industry within 5 years. That's a huge number because those that make it, those that are top performers, they respond differently. It's not like they don't have trials. It's the fact that they have to choose every single day a different path. They have to choose to be optimistic. We're not optimistic by nature. We choose to be optimistic, or we're relenting to pessimistic complacency.
Wow. We have to choose to be optimistic. Very true. Having studied top performers, you were talking about that. You said that you created your own 4 pillars. Let's talk about that. What is the secret to top performance?
Yes. Studying top performance, I've realized that when individuals are in a peak state, there are 4 pillars that are operating. And these 4 pillars we could adapt into any business or industry. Of course, through our program, we work with insurance agents, of course, so we've built out those 4 pillars for them, which makes our process unique. But the first one is optimism. Now, optimism, it's not fully. One thing about me, Mark, is, like I said, I'm a nerd. I love studying and I love research. One thing that piques my interest is called etymology, which is the study of words and their origin to find greater meaning. And so optimism comes from the Latin word, which means best. And so when we replace that, an optimist says, is this action going to have the best impact for my future? Am I doing the best thing for my client? Is this going to be the best play to choose? Is this going to give us the best outcome? Am I providing the best experiences for the clients? When I have a setback, how do I find the best avenue to go from that? How do I learn from it? So we view things differently. We view things with the best possible outcome. No matter what it is, all of the events that happen to us, they're going to happen to us. But it's how do we choose the best possible course because of that creates the outcome you want.
So is that something one should practice on a daily basis? Is that something one should practice at a multiple times a day, decision by decision basis? Because what you said is absolutely correct, right? As long as we're doing the best for ourselves, the best for our clients, best by our community, best by everything that matters, then our action is fruitful and meaningful. And that'll bring results. How often should one practice that?
Multiple times a day. Some of the techniques we teach is every negative experience, you need 4 positive experiences to have the same impact as that one negative. I'm sure many of us have come home from work and our spouse has asked us how your day went. And the first thing that comes to all of our minds is all the negative things about the day because they resonate more. So we have to consciously create more positives. So we do a challenge with our agents called the Day of Optimism Challenge. And it is extremely difficult. That's why it's a challenge. But every time you have a negative thought or a negative experience, you have to immediately counteract it with 4 positive things. And doing that throughout the day, you'll see how often negative things come at you. But then you're trying to consciously make a shift towards looking for more positives in that moment.
Wow. So that's really interesting. I've never heard of that. And I want to try it myself, honestly. So basically, if a negative thought comes into my mind, I should then follow it up with 4 positive thoughts or actions.
4 positive thoughts or actions, they can be interchangeable.
Okay.
But we want to replace that. Our brain works like an old movie reel, right? Where it's all the pictures that just move. And so if we have that negative thought and that amygdala, so when we see that picture, there's a tiny part in our brain called the amygdala that regulates our emotions and it reads our emotions. When it sees a negative picture right on the screen, a negative event, it fires more rapidly, which means it's going to embed that into our brain so we remember it. So that way, if it ever happens again, our body says, careful, that was scary, that was hard, that was difficult, and invokes fear within us. And if our brain works like that movie reel, if we have that negative thought, we need to replace it. And so by instantly replacing it with 4 positive things, back to back, that greater impact of four things will have a similar impact as that one negative. So you can essentially erase that negative experience and start looking for the good and the best things from that.
So, would the positive thoughts that I would utilize to interact, so counteract the negative ones, are they positive thoughts about myself? Can you give an example? Let's say a typical entrepreneur's journey. A typical entrepreneur journey is filled with self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, right? All the good bits that we have all gone through, right? So let's say I'm somebody sitting there and I'm thinking, I just got off a sales call and I'm like, the person didn't want to buy it. And I was like, oh my God, this is not going to happen. I'm just not cut out for this. That's a negative thought, right? So what would be an example of four things that or positive things I could say to myself or do to counteract that?
A technique we use is to express the emotion right then. To say, I am feeling pretty down that I didn't make that sales call. And then we make that shift to say, okay, what can I learn from this? I learned that I want to change this objection. He said that he was interested to buy. I said this. What I can do is I can say this instead. And by doing that, I'm going to be better this next time. And so now we've made that shift. We've learned from it. Say, I'm going to do this next time. That was successful. I can do this. I want to go get that next one because next time I want that objection to happen because now I am better. I can overcome it. So now we're telling ourselves, I'm better because of this. I'm greater. I've elevated myself. We're saying these positive phrases to say, I'm so glad I had that experience. That's another thing you'd say. I'm grateful for that client. Gratitude is a great form of like positivity as well. I'm grateful the client said those things because now this next client, I can serve them better. So we want to build ourselves up through these kind of four kind of positive things to say, okay, what did we learn from this? How am I going to improve? I'm great at this. I did this really well. And then we can go back and say, okay, what went well in that appointment? I said this really well. The client kind of beamed at this. He liked my humor joke. Okay, I am funny. I can relate. And so then you shift the script on the appointment to go towards those positive events. Of course, we have to go through the negatives. They're not just going to go away, but it's how do we take those and learn from them that really makes that difference and turning that into a positive learning experience rather than just a woe is me experience.
No, there is, as I think about it, there is so much value in this because what almost always happens is that one negative thought that came into our head, it's not like it just came and went away. We all have a tendency to dwell over it. So if this is something that's happening in the morning, there is a chance this will not only last with me all day, but also next day. And next day, if I couldn't make any sale, then wow, it just confirmed the thought that I had yesterday. It's just a really bad slope. It's just, you just keep falling. So the fact that we have the negative feeling and the thought, sure, we're not erasing it, but we are balancing it out with four positive thoughts. It immediately slows down the powerful, meaningful, negative soldier from just taking us to continue down. So I really like it. I'm actually going to practice this and I'm going to give you credit for that because I've never heard it before and I think it's very valuable.
Thank you. So that's our first pillar. Our second pillar is systems. We have to have repeatable systems in place. They're there so we can get repeatable results. So looking at your business, do you have systems for your sales, for your marketing, for each of your employees? Do you have a system for follow-up? Do you have a system for customer service? Do you have a system for customer experience? Which is different. And then do you have systems for referrals? We need systems in place. Otherwise, we run by chaos. Without a system, we run by chaos. And as many parents know what chaos feels like. I have 3 kids, right? We know what chaos feels like. But we don't want that in business, right? We need systems. We have repeatable results.
Let's talk about the two of the ones that you said that are very intriguing to me: customer experience and referrals. What are the two? What are those two things, and what are the systems you usually recommend people utilize for those?
Absolutely. The first, we'll go with customer experience. Customer experience, I guess it's easier to define customer service. Customer service is, here's my product. We're going to answer the phone call. We have a place to park. You're going to receive XYZ. Now, the thing about customer service is You're going to see that from every company. It's almost an expectation, right? If you don't have that, then it's negative. You're just like, the client's like, why don't they have that? Service is an expectation. Customer experience, though, is an investment into the client. They have to be invested in. They're what's called peak moments that are rememberable. A prime example I can give you that does really well with this is Disney, for example. Disney is huge on creating moments for clients. When we took my kids there to Disney, we actually went with my niece and nephew and my sister and brother-in-law and went for my niece's birthday. And as we were eating lunch, a cast member, that's another thing, they call themselves cast members, that's a little change for the experience, came to us and just asked us a question. They said, "What are you celebrating today?" And we said it was her birthday. And then they said, "We have a gift for you." Brought out a Disneyland button and gave it to my niece and then gave each of us one saying, "I'm celebrating Brooke." And now every worker after who saw that button wished her a happy birthday. So those are just peak things. It's had to be invested in, right? The buttons aren't free. Disney had to invest into those moments and those experiences. And so what we do is we do a practice with clients that says, write out everything that is expected in your space. What can a client receive and expect across the board from any company they could go to? And then look at all of those and say, how could I turn this into a personalized, memorable experience for the client? One example would be that I share a lot with agents in the insurance industry is they have usually like a fridge with beverages in the waiting room. And the receptionist says, "Would you like a drink?" And everybody says, "Oh, I'm good." The standard response. But an experience would be the receptionist greets them, goes back to the business owner, says, "Your appointment's here." As they come back, they bring drinks on a silver platter to the client and says, "Can I offer you a drink?" Now it just turned that into something they've never seen before. They turned it into an experience, but it had to be invested in, right? It's those little things that our brain picks up on that's memorable. A personalized note with their favorite things on it. What we do for our clients, of course, we talk about their goals and their strategies. So I write a personalized card when they sign up, but it's customized with all the things they want to accomplish in their business. And we personalize those to what they want to accomplish. So it's how can we make these personal and also a peak moment?
Yeah, and that's amazing because these are the little things that actually end up mattering. Those are the little things years later after Disneyland, you're not talking about the Space Mountain ride you went on. The story you're telling is about that little button and how everybody said, "Thank you, happy birthday." And for me, this is my personal experience with you. I talk to about 100 people a week for pre-interviews for podcasts, pre-selecting them. And then if they qualify, they get on the podcast, right? After a while, names and stories blur. But I got on a pre-interview with you, and right on my very first call, I saw behind the board, there was a message that says, "Welcome, Mark." Having done hundreds and hundreds of these, that has never happened before. And that stuck in my memory. When I open up my calendar every morning, I see 12, 14, 15 calls a day, right? And there could be 4 Tylers that I'm speaking to. But I remember Tyler Jensen. So when I was looking at the call and I was like, who am I talking to? And I was like, oh wait, it is Tout. So a lot of times as businesses, we ignore these little small things. For those who are listening to this, and if you're try it because it matters. So I love it. I love that. What about referrals?
So referrals, we have 4 different referral systems we teach our agents. We could go hours into these different systems, but we can just start with one. I was recently on a podcast as well, just on referrals done right, and we talked about this system, and it's asking at those peak moments. Oftentimes, people ask for referrals towards the end of an appointment. I'll use the same analogy of Disneyland. Imagine if you just got off Space Mountain that you just said, and then somebody at Disney says, "How would you rate your experience here at Disney today?" They're going to get a higher rating because they're in a peak moment. Versus if somebody came up to you during lunch and you just spent $15 on a hot dog and your son just threw it on the floor, and you're just like, "There's your college savings that you just tossed out," and somebody came up to you and said, "How would you rate your experience at Disney today?" You're going to give them pretty lower rating, okay? Oftentimes people find themselves asking for referrals at that moment when people are throwing out the hot dog, right? You just told them about your price and now they're thinking, "Oh my goodness, what's this, what's that," right? And you have all these objections they came out with versus looking at your sales process. Look at where did I provide the most value? Where did I provide the most education? Where did my customer feel that peak moment in our discussion? That's where you need to insert asking for referrals. And then at that moment, you could say, we've had a great discussion so far. And I know this may sound cliche. I know you may think, what in the world is he doing asking me this at this point? But I'd love to ask you a favor. Would you be opposed to introducing me to this person? And you're going to make that specific to people you've heard about in their discussion with them. So usually you're discovering different avenues with a client about them. So maybe you heard about their mom, maybe you heard about their brother, maybe you heard about their neighbor in the discussion. So just say, would you be opposed to introducing me to your mom so we could have kind of the same value discussion we just had with you? And asking you at these peak moments before you get to the rest of maybe your sales pitch or different avenues, is going to be a soft close for you. Because if they give you a referral, that signifies to you that they see a need in your product. They're pretty optimistic about doing business with you, and they trust you enough to give you the name of a family member. If they don't, you can just refer back and be like, oh, I said it was going to be cliche, but love to just provide some more value with you. So it's not dead yet. You can then go on and explain your product, the price, whatever it is to finish the appointment. But now you know that the client has some objections you need to overcome, whether that's trust, whether that's a need for the product, or willingness to do business with you yet. So it gives you a precursor of their willingness to buy. And then you can always ask at the end a second time if they said no the first time.
No, it's incredibly smart. And the way it's positioned, not only we are able to try to get a referral from the best moment that they have had, but also because of how you explained it, it gives you a little bit of an idea of where the conversation is going or how the customer is feeling, especially if they are not moving in a direction where they want to trust you and be able to buy from you. So now you have a little bit more feedback even before having asked the closing questions. Is there another one that you would like to share?
Other systems we usually do with insurance agents, we have a lot of center of influences or joint work partners, which is really valuable for business. And we teach the concept of who is your most influential individuals, right, that share the same customer base. And you need to change from what's in it for me to how can I serve them? And those that do that will take the effort to put questions into their systems and processes to discover referrals for the other party. An example in like the insurance space, insurance agents work a lot with mortgage officers. So every refinance, they need insurance, evidence of insurance. So it's a great referral partner for agents. However, it's usually one-sided, where the mortgage officer always sends a referral to the agent because they need evidence of insurance to get their loan done. What we teach our agents is to say, I want their business to grow as much as mine. So we teach our agents to ask a simple question with all of their home policies, which is, what is your current interest rate? And do you plan to refinance within the next 6 months? If every agent started asking that question to every client, they're going to discover referrals to pass back to that mortgage officer. So we need to invest the time to say, what can we do in our systems to generate referrals for them? Because that's going to deepen that relationship going forward.
No, I love it. I love it. What's the next pillar in the top performance framework that you have?
The next one is power. Now, the power I'm referring to here, Mark, is the ability to apply knowledge. I'm sure everybody could finish this quote. Knowledge is power. Okay? This is attributed to Francis Bacon way back in the 1500s. However, I would say it's not accurate in today's society. And the reason being, I see your curious face there, Mark. The reason being is if knowledge was power, wouldn't AI be the most powerful thing? It has access to the most knowledge. So if it has no way to apply it, it's just potential power. So coming back to etymology and the study of words, the word wisdom means application. It's how you apply knowledge. So a better phrase for that is wisdom is power, because that's what actually takes action on these. So power is we're going to gain knowledge through study, through trial and error, through mentorships, through podcasts like this, right? But people can listen to this podcast all day and it becomes knowledge. But if they don't do anything with it, it's just potential power. Those that are top performers will take that knowledge and actually apply it into their life and business. And that wisdom allows you to articulate better. How do you articulate your value? How do you articulate your price? How do you articulate those customer services? You need to study that. You need to refine it and apply it. That's the power we're talking about.
No, you're right. Knowledge doesn't mean anything unless we actually apply it. If they have a leaky faucet and I know how to fix the leaky faucet, knowing it doesn't fix it. I have to apply that knowledge and be able to fix it. So, yeah. So, the way you explained it, I love it. To put it in a daily practical sense with entrepreneurs, where do you see that they fail with this step? Do you see there are areas where they're aware of that they know what to do, but they're just simply not doing it?
Issue I see with a lot of small business owners and like insurance agents I work with is there's a lack of discovery, a lack of seeking out that knowledge because that's difficult, right? Like we said at the beginning, things that are difficult, our brain says don't do them again because of our negativity bias. And so it's that lack of discovery. Those that are performing at a peak state make time to invest in themselves. They take time to read books. They take time to improve themselves. They invest in the education of their employees. They make that a daily effort. And then it does go back to a lack of application because that's good. But those that make the real difference are those that say, as a team, we learned this principle. How can we take that and how can we use it into our business? Whether that's you do that in team meetings in the morning on a weekly basis, if you're doing a book read with your office to say, okay, in our team meeting, I want you guys to all look at this of what we read in these two chapters, and each of you say, what can we apply into the business to make our business better? What can we apply into our culture to make it better? As a business leader, good ideas can come from anywhere in your organization. So if you don't take the time to stop and listen about some of the discoveries of your employees, you're missing out on a lot of growth that can happen. So take time to apply. You have to take time to apply it back in your systems.
Yeah, and so true, right? There's so many times even I work with entrepreneurs and we're talking about things and they're taking notes or they're watching videos and they're reading books and they're taking notes. And there's an accumulation of notes that are really good, but they have never really applied that. And for some, they're not even reading or learning. They're so caught up in the day-to-day minutia of running the business. I call it treading water. They're so busy treading water that they're tired and they simply don't have the time to sit down and read a book. So that's where time management and energy management comes into play because, like you said, without making ourselves learn more, there is no way for us to be better because it's the application of the knowledge. So I love it. Love it. Tell us about the fourth pillar.
Fourth pillar is focus. You have to have a direction. Without it, if we don't have a direction, if we don't have a goal, if we don't have a focus, is going to take over. There is no fear when the focus is clear. So as a business owner, you need to have strategic plans. You need to have goals. You need to have a direction. And then you need to have accountability with your organization. Without that accountability, who's going to hold people responsible? Throughout business management, you need to have alignment in who accomplishes each role, what is their daily focus, what is their daily tasks, who they report to. Because that way everybody has a focus of what needs to be accomplished. And then it also stems to an internal focus as well. As a leader, you need to create a culture of internal values where your employees can feel their own self-worth working at the agency, where they feel fulfilled based on the values that they hold dear. Because we all have different motivators. We can all be motivated in different ways. So a one-size-fits-all reward system, recognition system, or accountability system doesn't fully cut it with employees. You have to understand what motivates them personally because that will drive that individual employee to overcome fear. So if you have a cold caller who you want to make sure they don't have call reluctance, that's a fear they have, give them a focus to find out he loves to make it to his son's baseball games at 3 o'clock. So you can give him the focus to say, hey, if you can focus on all these calls and accomplish all these calls and finish the tasks before this time period, we'll let you go to your son's baseball game and still pay you for that extra hour. You better believe that focus, that internal motivation, because he loves his son so much, is going to negate the fear of call reluctance to make sure he's going to make those calls.
Very good. Like you said, if there is no specific destination that we're going to, then we will never be able to map out a path to it. And therefore, we'll never be able to get there. And in order to be able to do that as an entrepreneur, focus is what matters. What do you do when there are multiple things that are calling for your attention? As an entrepreneur, especially a beginning one, everyone has been there. You're just a genius with 1,000 hands. You're playing and doing every role, right? So what happens when there are competing priorities that require your focus?
question, I would say, Mark, stems back to that system application. When we look at the systems in place, we've all probably heard of the 80-20 rule, right? Where we need to look at, okay, how do we focus on those 20% of activities? And then how can we either automate the 80% with a system or with an employee or with a process to make sure those can be taken off my plate? There are ample resources out there, from like virtual assistants to even like outsourcing, that businesses could look at to literally take off your plate some of those mundane tasks that we feel like we have to accomplish. Because those tasks that we feel like are pulling us in all directions, to me, that's really just a sign of complacency, where it's your negativity bias saying, I don't want to focus on that most important task because that most important task is hard. So I'm just going to busy myself with everything else. So I can say that I had a busy day, but I didn't see a lot of productivity. That you're being complacent in that moment, right? A top performer says, yes, my day is crazy. Where are my priorities? Where can I automate? Where can I delegate? And I'm going to put those systems in place quickly so I have time to focus on those priorities I need to accomplish.
Exactly. Especially when there are a lot of things we need to do, it's so much easier to make up the excuse that I'm just busy, I have so many things to do, because you're focusing on all the things that don't need to be done. When I coach my students, one of the tools is we categorize the daily tasks as category A, B, C, and D. A is what you're talking about, the most important, the top 20%, right? The 20% of the work that'll bring 80% of the results. That's the principle. That's the 80-20 rule you were saying. That category A tasks are the 20%. We cannot just spend doing B, C, and D tasks and not do the A tasks because we're afraid of them. In most businesses, category A tasks, the 20% tasks are the revenue generation tasks, which I call our RGAs, right? I say there's two types of tasks. There's RGAs, revenue generation activities, and then tasks. Anything that is not generating revenue is an admin task. I just categorize that in two buckets. So I said, don't spend the entire day doing admin tasks because the business is run on revenue. So I love it. I love how you broke it down. It's so meaningful. And as you were saying it, there are different layers of understanding that I'm getting through this. Tell us a little bit about your university. You have Insura Risk University that you run.
Is our coaching platform that we designed for the home and auto insurance industry. That was my background. Been in insurance for a long time. And so discovering all this, like we've discussed today, these 4 principles can be applied in many businesses. But what we've done through our coaching platform is said, hey, we've built out these 4 pillars for you, right? So through our coaching platform, we're going to walk you through what an agent would need throughout these. So here's a sell system that we've built and created and tested and proven. Here's a life insurance sell system. Here's systems for your employees that you can implement right away. Here's these referral systems, right? So through the coaching platform, they can learn how to implement all those to start seeing results. With the knowledge, we say, okay, here's all the insurance knowledges that somebody would want to know coming in. So as you hire a staff member, they go through the training and they can come up to speed to know how do they articulate value in insurance, how do they perceive those coverages to a client. So we're going to teach all that knowledge. We're going to teach psychology. So when you're running appointments, when you're doing sales, when you're objections, we're going to teach you the psychology behind all that. And then as the agent, the focus, we say, okay, here's your strategic plans, here's your goals, here's how you can create those customer experiences for your clients based on the industry, here's how you can do that for your employees. So we built out those systems for our coaching program and then offer the group coaching to help them implement it. We have application sessions they get to attend to really dive deep and apply it right into their business.
Love it. Love it. There are so many teachers out there that I have learned from. And the bestest teachers that I've ever had were the ones that were able to take a very complicated topic and be able to explain it so well that it became second nature. You have an ability to do that, and that is a gift. The realm, the area, your expertise, the niche that you're working in, helping entrepreneurs, helping insurance agents, that's not an easy niche because it's one where people are constantly stressed out and anxious and afraid, and there's imposter syndrome and all these things that I said earlier. But the way you explain things, the 4 pillars that you laid out, I can only imagine what they are like. This was just a sampling that you gave out. I can only imagine what it's like inside of your signature program when it's all fully blown out. So thank you so much for being so generous and giving the time and teaching the audience these wonderful things. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
What I'm saying is To be a top performer, it's your actions that will empower you to live your best life. So go out there and take action.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark.